Hello! In this video I'm going to demonstrate how to dye fabric using Procion MX dyes. So Procion MX dyes are mostly used for cellulose fibres like cotton or linen, but they can also work using silk fabric as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is weigh my fabric and make a note of this. This means I can then calculate how much dye and how much fixative is required. So I multiply the weight of my fabric by 0.05 grams to get the amount of dye that I need, and then I multiply it by 0.5 to get the quantity of soda ash, and by 1 for the quantity of salt. After I've done that, I can soak my fabric in just clean warm water, and that'll just mean that I can hopefully get a more even dye when I come to dyeing my fabric. If your fabric isn't clean, then you might just need to wash it before dyeing it. Again, that helps with getting an even colour. So wearing a mask, gloves and an apron and working in the fume booth, begin to weigh out your dye. So I've got a clean container and I'm using the scales. I need 2 grams of dye in total, so I'm mixing up 2 lots of 1 gram quantities, which I can then mix together. If I did go a little bit over or a little bit under on my measurements, that wouldn't be the end of the world. I would just make a really good note of what I've actually put in my dye so that I can replicate results in future. So I'm now weighing out my second colour in a separate container. And taking my time with weighing it out to make sure that I can be as precise and accurate as possible. So once you've weighed out your coloured dyes that you want to use, you would then begin to add in a tiny bit of water to paste your dyes. Creating a paste out of the dye really helps with dissolving it more effectively and means that you avoid getting small spots of dye on your fabric. After you've made a little bit of a paste, add some more water to create a bit of a dye solution. And do this for any of the dyes that you have measured out. Once you've finished preparing your dyes, you then want to begin weighing out your soda ash. So I'll weigh out 20 grams of soda ash, and then again I'll add water to that to create a solution. It's important to stir the soda ash solution really thoroughly to make sure that the soda ash is as dissolved as possible. After weighing out your soda ash and wetting that through, you can do the same with the salt. So here we're weighing out 40 grams of salt. And then once again, I'll add in water and stir it thoroughly until all of the salt has fully dissolved. So after you've prepared your dye and your fixatives, which is the salt and soda ash, you then want to stir the salt into a jug of lukewarm water. And this jug is going to be the vessel that we're going to dye our fabric in. I'm then adding in my dye into the jug of water and then mix it through really thoroughly to ensure it's fully dissolved. Being really careful to notice if there's any small spots of dye floating on the surface of your liquid. After you've added in your dye, you can then introduce your fabric to the dye pot. And it's important to stir your fabric regularly while it's dyeing. This helps get a really nice even finish for your dyeing. The length of time that you dye your fabric for depends on the shade required. So you could leave it overnight if you needed a really dark colour, but obviously you couldn't stir it regularly then. After you've finished dyeing it, you would remove your fabric briefly and then introduce your soda ash into the solution. So your soda ash will then act as the fixative to fix the dye to the fabric. You put your fabric back into your dye pot and leave that for another 15 minutes, again stirring it nice and regularly to help get a really even colour. After you've finished dyeing, remove your fabric into a clean jug, collecting any drips, where you can then wash it out in the sinks using Metapex until the water runs clear. Thank you for listening. If you've got any questions, ask a technician.